Hey, what's going on? Today I'm going to give you my best tips to avoid a delayed flight and what I have learned to do when the inevitable sometimes happens. Before explaining the steps you should go through in order to get to your destination as quickly and as hassle-free as possible, remember that a delayed or canceled flight is usually out of the airline's hands. Airlines don't want to purposely delay or cancel flights. It's bad for business and it only frustrates travelers. Only on rare occasions is a delay caused by a mechanical problem or some other issue they can control. It's normally the uncontrollable factors that cause these delays in flights. An incoming flight facing significant headwind, pilots getting sick, an unpredictable snowstorm or other conditions that make it difficult to get from point A to point B on time. For you and the airlines, it's all about safety. If there is even the slightest chance that something could go wrong while in flight or during takeoff or landing, the result is rarely pretty. Safety is always the ultimate goal. Ask any pilot how much fun it is trying to take off or land a huge Boeing 747 in a heavy crosswind. First, let's go through some of the things you can do to lower the risk of the flight being delayed or canceled. One of the big things I've learned is to plan your travel route intelligently. What I mean by this is avoid northern airports during the winter and avoid southern airports during the summer when possible. For example, I really enjoy going out to Arizona to visit friends and usually travel to Vegas a few times a year for shows and conventions for work. For me, this means I have to fly out of my regional airport into a larger one in order to reach my destination. From Evansville, Indiana, I have the option to fly out to Dallas-Fort Worth or Chicago O'Hare. I have made the mistake of flying to each at the wrong time. When I flew through Dallas to get to Phoenix, the plane couldn't be cooled down, was delayed by several hours, and ultimately canceled. The other time, I was flying into Las Vegas and went through Chicago in January. Yet another bad decision. What I do now is fly through Chicago in the summer when the weather is pretty moderate and fly through Dallas-Fort Worth in the winter months to avoid the killer heat. Secondly, get a direct flight when possible. Adding in layovers and connecting flights always complicates things and just creates room for more problems. Sometimes it may be worth it to drive another hour or two to a larger airport to avoid having to fly out of a regional one. For me, I've driven up to St. Louis and over to Louisville on several occasions for a better flight option. Third, fly as early as possible in the day, especially if you have a connecting flight to a regional airport to get home. I learned this the hard way about a month ago now. I was flying from Boston to Chicago back to Evansville. Flight out of Boston was delayed and ended up sprinting around O'Hare Airport for nothing. It was 10:30 p.m. and the last flight to Evansville had already left and the next one wasn't leaving until 11 a.m. the next morning. As much fun as sleeping on the floor and having beef jerky and trail mix for dinner is, it would have been smarter to either A, stay an extra night in Boston and leave the next morning, or B, leave the morning of my last day in Boston instead of sticking around for the end of the conference. Moral of the story, fly early in the day so that if you do miss a flight, there's likely another one you can hop on only a few hours away instead of camping in a terminal. Lastly, no alternative options in case you urgently need to get home and there's something you know you can't miss. For me, I know I have about 4 airports within a 2 to 3 hour drive of Evansville: St. Louis, Louisville, Indianapolis, and Nashville. As I'll go into below, having these as backups gave me some flexibility and options the customer service rep could look up. Yes, I need to rent a car, but $100 and a 2-hour drive is better than sleeping in the terminal, hungry, if you ask me. With those tips in mind, let's jump into a scenario where your flight has been delayed. If you want to jump straight to the scenario where your flight has been canceled, the timestamp for that portion of the video will appear here. So, you're at the airport and you've just been notified that your flight has been delayed. First, figure out if the length of the delay is significant enough to affect other plans. Is this a connecting flight that's going to affect the rest of your journey? If so, start mapping out alternative routes that can be taken to get you to your destination. Oftentimes, your app will show your alternative flight options. If you find one that fits the bill, confirm it quickly. Everyone else will be on their phones doing the same thing, so don't hesitate if you see one that might be a little inconvenient but will work. I guarantee you, if you don't, it'll be gone on the next refresh. If your app doesn't show you anything for the delay, assess the line at the boarding area. If the line seems long, give the 1-800 customer service number a call. It'll probably be quicker. And don't forget, there's another person on the end of the line, so don't be a jerk. Some people may opt to get in line and then make the call while waiting in line, so eventually you'll get a hold of someone. If the current delay isn't going to affect other flights you might have to catch, consider the idea there may be another delay and start planning for it. For example, when I was traveling through DFW in the middle of July last summer, my flight was delayed by an hour, then another hour, then another 2, and so on and so forth until 6 hours later, it was finally canceled. The plane couldn't be cooled because it was so hot. Should have recognized after the second delay, I'm probably not getting out of Texas anytime soon. The temperature was only rising and the sun wasn't going anywhere for another couple hours. So after coming to this conclusion, I sought different routes to my destination, Phoenix at the time. I ended up getting put in a hotel for the night and left early the next morning. With this kind of planning, there may not always be a better option, and sometimes you're just out of luck. But having a backup plan is a good idea. Before we get into what to do when your flight gets canceled, I just want to take a minute to thank my friends over at Chester Travels. If you're needing a carry-on or checked bag, check them out at chestertravels.com. They're better and cheaper than away luggage and offer free 2-day shipping on all orders. Don't believe me? Just check out the video link that will appear here, somewhere around where I compare the two side by side. Chester Travels will help you get your belongings to your destination safely and in style. Now honestly, check this out. Good suitcase. And in my comparison video, you'll see that I compared the Chester carry-on, side by side with the away luggage, which I have sitting in my closet over there. Personally, I do prefer the Chester, and that's not because they paid me or anything. Instead, the only compensation I get is a little bit of a commission if you choose to buy a Chester carry-on bag through one of the links in the description below. So, if you really do want to buy one, and are even considering it, just go ahead and click the link in the description below. It opens up in a new tab. You can check it out after the end of this video. And if you do decide to buy, then it helps me out a little bit because making this video isn't free, and I made investments in all kinds of other stuff like the lighting and everything I mentioned in other videos. And if you need a checked bag, Chester Travels is coming out with a checked model of their carry-on version. It's literally just like a bigger version of their carry-on bag that's been so popular on Amazon and has received, all kinds of fabulous reviews on the platform. So if you're interested in those, click the link below, go to their website and check it out. So let's say your flight gets canceled, like mine was earlier this year. My first mistake was hesitating to book the next available flight that looked okay, but wasn't exactly perfect. Waiting literally a few minutes ended up costing me any seat on any flight to home for the next day. If you skipped ahead to this part and didn't hear me mention it in the first half, don't hesitate on these slightly more inconvenient flights. Find the first one you can and confirm it ASAP. I realized that after talking to customer service, getting a seat is better than not getting one, and you can always call and change it later. At this point, hopefully you have confirmed another flight and you at least have a seat and a set game plan. Or, if you were like me, you waited too long and are in a pickle. I saw a few flights leaving a day later, which I was flexible with, so I called my hotel and they were able to extend my stay another day. After confirming that, I called the airline back and tried a few different things. My home airport is a smaller regional airport. It literally has 2 terminals, and whenever I have a flight leaving, I show up maybe 30 minutes before we're supposed to board and, go through security and all that real quick. So I'm limited on when flights arrive or depart. Knowing this, I asked the customer service rep if there were any decent flights available at the airports surrounding me. Like I had said, I'm in Evansville, Indiana, which is essentially the most southwestern tip of Indiana and is right in between St. Louis, Indianapolis, Louisville, and Nashville. They're all within reasonable driving distance. I didn't mind renting a car and driving a few hours if I was able to get home a little bit sooner. The customer service person I talked to was incredibly helpful. I wish I was able to complete a survey or something after the call because I don't think I've ever had a representative look for so many different routes out of Las Vegas in such a short amount of time while I'm sitting in the back of an Uber. Ultimately, I ended up heading to Louisville, where I rented a car and drove 2 hours back to Evansville, but not before I made a stop at LAX and then flew from LAX to O'Hare back to Louisville. Luckily, none of these flights were delayed or canceled. So what about freebies? Sometimes there aren't any flights available, you can't get a rental, the hotel can't extend your stay, or you might be stuck in an airport for who knows how long. You might just be really unlucky on that particular day, and sometimes it happens. When this happens, I always assume I'm not going to receive anything and then figure out how to take care of some of the basic necessities on my own. food, sleep, etc. Because you might have to. In reality, the airlines don't owe you shit. You bought the ticket knowing this could very well happen. Buy some food before a restaurant or convenience store closes down, grab your spot to lay on the floor, and huddle up on the bench and wait. This is the reason it's a good idea to pack extra snacks just in case you do get stuck. On the other hand, the airline will usually help you out in some way. It's in their best interest to keep you as not unhappy as possible and make the delay or cancellation a little bit easier. For delays that are an hour or more, they'll typically roll out a snack cart with chips, fruits, drinks, etc. as a snack. If the flight does get canceled and another one won't be available until the next morning, like mine was in Dallas, you'll probably get put into a hotel for the night. A meal voucher and your cab fare to and from the airport taken care of. At least that's what it was in my case with American Airlines. In this situation, this is what everybody on the flight received. On the flip side of that, when I was flying out of Boston and my American Airlines flight got delayed and I missed my connecting flight to Evansville, I couldn't even get a meal voucher or anything from the reps at the podium right before you go and slide your ticket and before you board the plane. I went up and asked that, hey, flight out of Boston got delayed. Is there anything you can do? And there was a pretty swift no and a pretty unapologetic, hey, you're kind of just screwed. So that's what I was referring to. Going back to get my beef jerky and trail mix, which I ate for the night. That was my dinner for $18. And then huddled up on the floor and slept. Acting entitled to this or any compensation won't get you anywhere. I've watched plenty of rightfully irritated people chew the airline host out only to get the same thing I received. On the other hand, being patient, polite, smiling, and cracking a joke about the situation has probably contributed to at least maybe some free room upgrades or other perks I've received from time to time. Or at least it hasn't hurt and it makes me feel better about the situation. For example, when considering to land in other airports in my last Vegas adventure, I realized I booked a basic economy ticket, which technically doesn't allow you to change your destination or when you depart or arrive. The customer service person was in all rights allowed to tell me that my ticket didn't allow it, and they probably would have told me that if I was being a dick. But I wasn't, and I'm at least able to get home in a somewhat reasonable time frame. So there you have it. All of my tips thus far for avoiding delays and cancellations as much as possible and getting home as scheduled. Focus on what you can control and don't worry about the rest. Be prepared and your travels won't be as bad as what some others might be facing. As always, thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button below and consider subscribing to my channel for future videos. Also, don't forget to check out my friends over at Chester Travels at chestertravels.com. They make fantastic luggage, and if you'd like to see my in-depth comparison between them and away luggage, I'll have that video linked up below and show right here after I'm done talking. Be sure to use the links in the description below if you plan on purchasing. And again, thanks for watching, and until next time, happy travels.